So this video is to show you how to solder a wire to those bare pads. We're going to prep our wires first. Strip just enough so that when you're looking, the wire is not extending too far past the pad. You want it to be just about the same size as the pad. I'm going to take some flux, dip it in a little bit of flux. That helps the solder flow. And then I have these nice helping hands here. Put that there. Focus nicely. I have my soldering iron heated up to 400 degrees. I'm going to clean it off, just wipe it a little bit in that steel wool. That makes the tip nice and shiny, helps it conduct heat better. And then I'm going to put some solder on one side of the iron, just like that, and place it on the back side of the wire and flow the solder in to the front side of the wire. There we go. So now we have two nicely tinned, shiny wires. There we go, and that's all we need. So now to the board, we'll be using these on the right side. We're going to clean the iron off again. Put a little bit of solder on the bottom side of the iron, so that's the side that we're using. And then place it on the pad and feed the solder in. You'll have a nice little solder ball there. Do the same over here. There we go. So that's all you need. You can see they're raised up a little bit, so there's some solder on that pad. And then I'm going to take the wires that we just tinned, these again, dip them in the flux one more time, just a little bit. Clean the iron again, so you always want to use a clean iron. Put some solder on the bottom of the iron because it conducts heat better that way. Put the green wire on top and just press it all down. It didn't take very much, and the green wire has a nice solid connection. You can see it's nice and shiny all the way around, and it's sitting on the pad fully. Do a little tug test. See, that's pretty good. Now they look like they're touching right there, but they're not. It's actually that little bit of gap of solder mask, which is that green stuff. Solder doesn't like to stick to it, so it tries to stay away. We're going to do this again. Clean the solder tip. Put a little bit of solder on it and just press it down. Hold still. There we go. So this one doesn't look as good because there's a little ball of solder on top, but it's actually just fine. Now if you need to, you can go back and touch it real quick to fix those high spots or that little guy right there. But this is just fine, and they're not touching. Look a little bit closer. It's just flux. So now what we can do is take a little cup with some rubbing alcohol and take a brush. Let's open this up. Just dip a little bit in there. Paint some on that. And then we're going to take a clean paper towel and place it on top. And then squish all of that in there. Try and get into all the nooks and crannies, and we'll move it to another clean spot of the towel. Cool. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a little bit of yellow staining in all of this. That's the flux coming off. Dab that dry just a little bit. And now when we look at it, it looks pretty good. Let's actually fix this just a smidge. So I'm not going to put any solder on there. Just going to heat up the green side. Yeah. Make sure it's all the way hot. If it's not all the way hot, you'll get a cold joint. It'll look kind of dull. We want a shiny looking joint. And the wire moved a little bit to the side, but it's okay for this. So they're not touching, and a good way to check is with a multimeter. You can measure across from one side to the other and see if they are electrically connected. You do have to be careful sometimes because depending on what's on this side of the circuit or this side of the circuit, it may actually be connected inside and you'll get some reading, but as long as it's not a dead short, meaning 0 ohms, it's totally fine. Now if you want to remove this, we're going to take our iron again and clean it off. Put a little bit of solder on there. I'm going to take this yellow wire off first. Just touch it to the pad and lift it up. And then again with the green. Doesn't take a whole lot. And we're going to let that cool for a second. Maybe blow on it lightly. And then, because these are on the edge, we can just take this and wipe it. And that'll get most of the solder off. But if you really need to get everything off, we can use this solder wick. Not that one. That one's too small. We're going to use this. And someone's already used this. I'm going to take the snips and clip a little bit off. So we have a nice fresh area of solder wick. And now I'm going to clean the soldering iron off again. This wick is kind of flat on one side. It's hard to see. I'm going to set it down and put the iron on top of the wick and then onto the pad. And as it melts, it will soak up all of that solder. And we can see there's a little bit of solder in the wick. It's a different color. And that just put a whole bunch of heat into this board. So we're going to let that cool for a second. And while we do that, I'm going to snip off this little bit of used wick, throw it away. If you heat up the board too much, it will delaminate. You'll rip the pad right off, and then it's no good. We're going to do this again. Kind of walk it around just a little. There we go. And this solder wick will get hot because it's metal. Metal conducts heat very well. So now we have a clean board, looks very similar to the other ones, just with that flux sitting on there. And if we want to get rid of that flux, we can get our rubbing alcohol, just a little bit, brush that on, and take a clean part of the paper towel, swish that in, give it a little wipe, and now you have a nice clean board again, ready to be used.